Welcome back to the Deep Life. I have really been looking forward to this conversation for a long time. As I've mentioned pretty recently on the show, something that's been on both of our radars lately is the idea of molecular hydrogen and all the amazing benefits of it. And I think from a health standpoint, there's so much there. And then there's also so much there from like a spiritual basis. And today we are joined by Greg, the Hydrogen Man. So I'm really excited to pick your brain and start really diving into hydrogen from somebody who really knows all about it. Greg, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me on, guys. It's a pleasure meeting you guys. We were having some fun conversation.
Before Greg, the Hydrogen Man. There's no one better to talk to, and we're excited to dive deep.
Yeah, with a name like that, you had to become an expert in hydrogen, right?
Yeah, it was all, honestly, it just kind of happened. And how it happened and what it's kind of evolving into, and what I'm even finding out more and more about hydrogen, and how that name was literally more fitting than I even, it just kind of came out of nowhere. So it's really kind of wild. And I think the future's going to show even some more crazy stuff. So it's going to be interesting.
That's awesome. I can't wait to dive into it. I want to start with just kind of like a really broad question. And like, why is hydrogen such an important molecule, and why do you find it so important for our health and our well-being?
So ultimately, now I always have to begin with this. By the way, I'm not giving any medical advice. I'm not making medical claims, and everything stated in the video are my opinions, the opinions of the speaker, and should not be construed as claims for or against any product or products. All right.
Disclaimer, yes.
You'd be surprised at things that have been happening. So the lawyer's like, you got to say that. Okay, I'll always put that out there. But the reason hydrogen's actually so important, in my opinion, is literally because it is the life molecule. Everything in the universe, I don't think a lot of people realize this, but literally everything is either positive or negative kind of polarity, like gravity. Like there's true north, for example. And if you look at water, when you separate water, because water is actually made up of two gases, it's H2O. H2 is hydrogen, so it's a gas, by the way, molecular hydrogen. And then O is oxygen. Clearly, that's a gas. We're breathing roughly 20% of it in our atmosphere. So when you separate them, there's a very spiritual component, because the hydrogen actually ascends. It is literally the ascension molecule. And it ascends because it's the life molecule. And then oxygen will actually drop to the ground like a dead person would. And oxygen, a lot of people get it wrong here, but I'm not trying to poo-poo oxygen. We obviously need it. It's important. But oxygen is oxidizing. And technically, it is the death molecule, because oxidation basically, take a piece of metal and you'll turn it to dust, And so oxygen or hydrogen, the reason it's so important is because it is literally the life molecule. Without it, there's just no life. And our star, the sun, the light of our world, is literally, without it, we wouldn't have any life. And what a lot of people don't know about the stars is they're pretty much made of entirely hydrogen. They're like 99% whatever. Now, some people may argue and say, well, no, they're also made of helium. What do you think helium is? It's just another form of hydrogen. So I don't know if that answers your questions, but for health-wise too, the human body produces hydrogen in the gut, in other parts of the body too, but it appears that as we age, we make less and less of it. And so like any nutrient, I look at it almost like a nutrient, but it is the source of life in the body, in my opinion. And also, just like hydration is really important for health. And then of course, there's many pieces and building blocks, because our body is a lot like a house, like a structure. You need, all the different pieces to keep everything strong. But hydrogen is very foundational, in my opinion, to everything, to the whole universe and to the body.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Thank you. What kind of jumps out to me is an idea that I've had in my mind for a long time, and I feel like I'm almost like intuitively pulled toward it, is the idea of water being a vehicle for consciousness. And as you're saying that now, it's like, well, maybe it's not necessarily the water, maybe it's the hydrogen.
That's exactly correct. Well, that is my opinion. That is my contention. So one of the things that's happened is I used hydrogen originally, and before we really get into it, just so people know, all hydrogen is really not created equal. There's a lot of different ways to make hydrogen. And recently there was a laboratory that contacted me and they've been doing some very interesting testing. So, we can get into that later, but it's really important how you make it. Like, I'm not a fan of like these little bottles, and these are going crazy. Everybody's going crazy for them. But there's a reason that I'm not a fan, and we can talk about that later if you guys like. But with the correct type of hydrogen, basically purity is extremely important, because we are talking about a gas. And even in the medical field, for a lot of people who don't know, I worked in the medical field for just a little over 2 decades. And so I really understand how important purity is. It's actually one of the things that helped me get out of my major health crisis, because I shouldn't even be alive right now. I mean, I had some serious medical problems. I was in really bad shape. And so I was using hydrogen ultimately to really improve my health due to the science, because I'm always on the cutting edge of the latest data. And I'm not like talking so much about, I know there's always like a lot of people out there who talk about health. And a lot of times I'm very like data driven. So it has to be like, I got to have really good data 99% of the time. I don't just trust somebody who's like, oh, I think I figured something out, or, more hearsay than actual data. And while I was looking into the data, the Japanese, they're the ones who really discovered hydrogen. I also look at nature a lot. And a lot of people don't know that there's a place called Lourdes, France. You guys ever heard of it?
Yes.
And so Lourdes, France is like this healing water. Nobody really knew what made that water so magical and so healing. And then eventually the Japanese discovered that water had high amounts of molecular hydrogen dissolved into it. And that's a lot how this really got going. The Japanese, I'll tell you one thing about the Japanese, and I am here in Japan. This is where I live now. They're masterful when it comes to the science and understanding of water, to a level that I've never seen. You should see some of the equipment they have in stores. I'm like, this is nuts. And they have so many different waters for different things. It's unreal. I don't think a lot of people understand how much the Japanese know about water. To me, they are the modern day Atlantis. They really are. Wow. And I literally use the water every single day in many different ways for healing, and for my health. And we were speaking that I'm going to go to a hot spring as soon as well, probably not as soon as I'm done, but a little later today. And so anyway, as far as it having memory, yes. And I believe that actually the memory is within the hydrogen. And the reason that hydrogen has the memory is actually because it was the very first thing created in all of creation, in my opinion. So when you read ancient scriptures and they say, let there be light, to me, that light is actually the stars, as they call the Big Bang, this burst of light. But also, regardless of that, hydrogen is, in my opinion, actually light, because light is life and darkness is death. And it does appear to be memory in the hydrogen. And the more that I've used it, and the longer that my body, because everybody's body has roughly a 7-year cycle. You guys are aware of this?
Yeah.
Yep.
So the longer I've been using the hydrogen, some really strange things have been happening, like really, really strange things, from visions, information that I never thought I would have access to. Like, I got a library inside of me. It's nuts. And, I haven't talked about it a lot because normally I share stuff about medical.
Yeah.
Sure.
And I don't go into spiritual too much. Someday I will. But what I can tell you is I agree with you as far as it having memory, and all the memory of creation, basically. And that's the reason that water has memory also. And it's almost like it's pretty unbelievable. And eventually it begins to actually affect your mind. So even if we're dealing with depression or people who want to advance spiritually, of course, advancing your health, the way it affects your blood. I mean, there's so many different things. On the other side of the coin, though, which is really bugging me actually, is how hydrogen could potentially be toxic to the body. And not so much because hydrogen is toxic. Hydrogen literally appears to be the purest substance in all of existence. But on the other side, if made incorrectly, there's a lot of byproduct. And that's why this lab that recently contacted me, and he was showing me some of his lab tests, and he confirmed that I was right actually about a lot of things that I've been hypothesizing, because it only makes sense. But because most of the stuff that in the world of hydrogen comes from China. So like when I was showing you these bottles, I know people admit it, but they're all made in China. And so there was a guy who contacted me recently. He goes, "No, mine's not made from China. Mine's not from China." He's like, "Mine is from Utah. It's made in America." And I said, "I don't think so." And I said, "You might want to read closer." And then he found the label, and I said, "Read the label on the bottom of it." And he reads it, and goes, "Oh my gosh, it is from China." But the company said, but there's a lot of terrible information in regards to hydrogen. And I've started to wonder almost if it's a psyop from China, because China's not, it's not in their best interest. Well, it should be, but they don't seem to care about people's health that much. I mean, they are like the ultimate fakers. I've literally seen videos where they take vegetables and they dip them in dirt to make them look like they were freshly grown, and they inject with like glue to make them plumpier, and it's like so nuts, and it doesn't seem like they value human life. But the Japanese are on the whole other end of the spectrum. They have a very, very high trust society. The people, their moral compass is unbelievable. It's one of the reasons I love to live here, is because I am so at peace here. Like everybody leaves the doors unlocked, and you walk around without ever a care. You don't have to watch your back. And I've lived in countries where you have to watch your back constantly, and so and it's very clean. And I just, and I've been learning a lot about a very spiritual person. I don't know if you've ever heard of a man named Kukai.
I don't think so.
A lot of people don't know about Kukai, and this guy was like the Japanese Jesus, basically.
Okay.
His story is unbelievable, but he is the reason that the Japanese have a huge understanding about water. He was the guy that influenced their society to build hot springs, to dig for them.
Wow.
A lot of people don't know that the Japanese are they're obsessed. They're so passionate, so it almost looks like an obsession. But they have hot springs all over there.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I know very little about Japanese culture, and
I mean, and that was obviously one of the reasons, because water is very spiritual.
Yes, very. Yes.
There's even even in the Bible itself. I mean, I actually know about a lot of different scriptures, not just the Bible, but what I can say is, just to quote one of the interesting ones in the Bible, it says, "And the voice of God is like the sound of many waters." And so and then hydrogen being actually the main spiritual part of all this. See, the world's going to find out, by the way. It's coming. I was just kind of way ahead of the curve because I started back in 07, 08. Basically, what hydrogen actually means, the meaning of the origination of the word hydrogen actually means that which becomes water.
Okay.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, never thought of that, but that is fascinating.
That's literally what it means. And hydrogen, the Japanese have done something very special with. Like when I was researching how to make the best hydrogen and use the best hydrogen, it led me to Japan. The number one company that makes the best hydrogen machine in the world happens to be a Japanese company. Of course, it made sense. And then I started looking at their metal technology versus other, because I was looking for cheap stuff. Everybody wants, something. The problem is that you don't want to make it the cheap way, because it can potentially be very bad for your health. And I learned more about every single modality of making hydrogen, and there's not enough talk about it. Like almost nobody talks about it. I'm like the only guy practically who talks about the true safety and purity of hydrogen. And then the Japanese found a way how to structure it. So you guys have heard of structured water, right?
Yes. We've structured our own water before. Yes.
It's like the Analemma wand, and structure water that way.
They've literally taken this to a whole other level. They're literally structuring that which becomes water, which is the hydrogen.
Oh my gosh, wow.
It's unbelievable. And that's not the only thing they do. The size of the bubbles, so nano bubbles or super micro nano bubbles like ultimate, that really changes the way the hydrogen works in the body too. And they found a way to do that also. And everything that they've done in regards to hydrogen, they're just so next level. I mean, they're even building a city, by the way. They call it the Woven City. And they basically want it to run off of hydrogen, because if you can run things off of hydrogen and figure out how to make it properly, basically it's clean, free energy for the end of eternity. I mean, it's forever.
Yes.
And the only clean water. So I mean, it's unbelievable stuff. I mean, I obviously love hydrogen, and obviously that's why they call me the hydrogen man.
Mhm. Yeah.
But I don't know if that answers your question, but
No, it absolutely does.
No, you did, and I love it. I love all the information and the knowledge that you're sharing. Can we dive just a little bit? Because I know that Dan has so many questions, and we do want to get into the science of spirituality and all of this. But if you could just give us a little bit of an understanding, because I know you touched upon your severe health issues. So was that something that led you to this? I know that you also mentioned you were in the medical field for 20 years or about that. Was that so? How did this just all cross over for you? If we could just have like a brief background, if you don't mind.
yeah. So really briefly, so being in the medical field was just kind of a job that I happened to fall into.
Okay.
And the first decade is when I really not only learned a lot, and I worked with numerous specialists. I worked with doctors literally all around the United States and even different parts of the world. And I worked a lot obviously in the field. And what I saw a pattern. So I'm really good at pattern recognition. And I started seeing, I mean, I could tell you what a doctor was going to do or say 80 to 90% of the time. Like I knew the protocols, I knew what they were going to do, and it was always the same thing. And I quickly started realizing that they can't do much. That's what I really realizing. These guys don't know what the hell they're doing for the most part. I mean, when I say that, I mean, with all due respect to any doctors out there, because I have friends that are doctors, but they don't solve a lot of problems. They throw medicines at you and they don't find the underlying issue. Obviously, sometimes they need to cut stuff out, and that's important. Antibiotics are probably one of the biggest saviors when you have an infection, and things of that nature. So anyway, not to get too deep into the whole medical field, but so the second decade that I was there was more of the same. So I really was very well versed on what happened in the field. And then I myself got sick. And that's really took a really nasty turn because I had some major heart problems. I was told I had maybe 10 years left of my life if I were not to get open heart surgery and see where that goes. I had pain literally all over my body. So something was going on as far as inflammation, and it would reach levels to where I literally couldn't walk. I was at level 10 pain. It felt horrible. And even the strongest of pain medications would not make my pain go away at all. So like it wasn't making a dent in regards to the pain. So that was a big problem. I had an absolutely horrible immune system. Like I would get sick at the drop of a hat. And it would literally, it could take me literally 2 months to overcome a common cold or the flu or something. I wouldn't recover. And then when I would recover, I literally would get sick again within a week. And I'm like, oh, and then I got to go through for another month or two. It was just absolute hell. I was also having, they noticed that my bone was degenerating. So like I was losing bone.
Yeah, gosh.
And so that was kind of another issue. And then, of course, my liver wasn't at doing it. It wasn't in tip-top shape. Neither were my kidneys. And so those were just some of the issues, that I was kind of going through. And on top of it, too, like my dad was always one of my best examples because he was going through his stuff, too, basically around the same time I was going through my stuff. But he had glaucoma for over 3 decades, just, blood pressure, high cholesterol, diabetes, and arthritis really bad. So that's how I started looking, I knew what the medical field was going to offer. And because of that, I was like, I need to find my own way. I was suffering too much and I couldn't even work anymore. I literally lost my job. I couldn't work anymore because I couldn't walk most of the time. Wow. And so that was really rough. And so that's basically what happened. And then I was researching a lot of different like medical information as far as what I could do to improve my health. And I did appear to also have an autoimmune issue, which was related to my gut. My gut was a mess, and we know that almost 80% of your immune system comes from the gut, so that makes sense. And then of course, all the inflammation in the body. And so, I wasn't just going to take some pill to fix all this. And so doing a lot of research, doing a lot of trial and error, trying a lot of different devices and supplements that just weren't working. And, losing a lot of money, not working and going through all that. So it really kind of ruined my life, to be quite honest with you. It was really a pleasant experience. And then I found some medical data about hydrogen. It was really new. And when I first read it, I actually was very skeptical. I thought this has got to be a hoax because it was too good to be true. I mean, it was so unbelievable what it did for the body that I just thought it wasn't true. I thought it was a scam, but I would periodically read about it. I would read about it for about 3.5 years, actually.
Wow.
Say what?
When was this? Like how long?
Uh, it was a long time ago. I mean, I don't remember the exact year. I'm not really good with dates, but it was
Just curious.
easily over a decade ago. It was probably back in 07, 08, something like that.
Gotcha. Thank you.
So I'm reading about it, but to be honest, I didn't really understand hydrogen back then. I'm like, so but what's hydrogen? And there's different types of hydrogen too. Like deuterium and protium, and so it was very confusing. I'm like, and okay, molecular hydrogen. Okay, what's so different about that? Like I felt like I wasn't really into chemistry, and so I was really trying to figure out how to understand all this. And so the more I read about it, the more interesting it sounded. And then I started seeing that it was very legitimate medical data coming out of Japan. And I was like, okay, so this is not a hoax. It seems legitimate. And by 3.5 years, I was just suffering so much that I was like, okay, I'll just try anything. And I was like, but how do I get this hydrogen? You can't just go to a corner drugstore. How do I know it's being made correctly? How do I know it's what they're using in these medical, these scientific studies that they were doing? They were showing obviously really amazing results. How do I know what the proper levels are or that I'm supposed to use? How do I know the proper protocols? I mean, it was very, very confusing at first. And I like to simplify things, and I've created a very simple protocol that I can share with different people, though I do modify it depending on people's issues, because I've become quite an expert in hydrogen. I mean, this is really what I know. And I've really gone off of a lot of the medical data from Japan, because it is used medically in Japan. These really top university hospitals use it medically. And I actually eventually created my own protocols, which have been actually copied by supposed experts out there, which I won't name names, but basically a lot of my ideas have literally been stolen from my channel. They just take them, and a lot of people have actually taken credit for stuff that I've developed.
Oh gosh.
But that's a whole other story. But anyway, so I developed these different protocols and a lot of trial and error, understanding how to make hydrogen differently. Like, just a quick tip for anybody who's looking at hydrogen machines, for example, just check to see what kind of metal they're using. That's a big one. If they're using stainless steel, that's like literally one of the worst metals you can use. And a lot of people use that metal, and it's horrible. The other one is, don't use anything with plated or coated metal. So there's a lot of like these Chinese bottles. I haven't seen one yet, and I've seen them all. People send me emails like, how about this one? I'm like, I know all of them. They're all the same thing. They're using plated metal. So a lot of people don't understand you guys know what plated metal is, right?
Yes.
And especially as a woman, like if you like jewelry, you want like high purity. You don't want plated and
yes.
Yeah.
It will come off, it stains you. Yes, I've had it, in my younger years. It's just cheap. Yeah, yes.
See, you totally get it, right? Well, when you're running electrical current through the metal when it's in water, what do you think happens? Literally, it starts falling apart. And then what do you think you're ingesting? And where do you think these are?
The water.
So people don't think about this. And some places will go as far as saying, well, we did a lab test, right? So they'll put water, they'll run the machine once, test it. And it's like, yeah, that's fine, because it takes multiple uses before the metal starts falling apart. And so it's really the industry it's so sad what they've done, but thank God the Japanese did it right. Literally, there's thousands of hydrogen machines out there, and I've only found 3 good ones out of tons of machines out there, and all 3 of them are Japanese.
Wow.
So,
well, yeah.
Do
your research. Yeah. Thank you so much for diving into that and sharing. That completely makes sense. Super inspirational. And gosh, I can only imagine the actual suffering and pain you were going through. But it really just again, not to sound like too woo-woo, but that's how the universe works. It seems like you've turned that pain into a purpose, and it seems like you are thriving now. Obviously, we've just met a couple moments ago, but the life force, the energy, just looking at you, it's vital, and it's emanating off of you.
Well, thank you. And it did ultimately save my life. The hydrogen did save my life. And there's a lot of fascinating things, like all the stuff I named off about my father, like all that stuff went away with hydrogen. So it was his eye doctor was blown away. They were so blown away because he had glaucoma for over 30 years. And glaucoma only gets worse as you age. It doesn't get better.
Right.
And so one of the things that ended up happening is he was using the hydrogen, and he has to get his eyes checked every year. And I started seeing this with macular degeneration. I just had there's a medical clinic that contacts me for advice, which is kind of crazy. And I'll just, tell the physician over there what I would do. I don't give any medical advice. And he had a guy with a torn retina, multiple surgeries, nothing was working. And I started finding ways of using hydrogen, but also water's important, by the way.
Mm.
And I don't want to just use any water for some of these protocols that I've developed. It's really important that it's of the highest purity, because it can be dangerous, by the way. We can talk about that in a second. But basically, my dad's eye doctor, when they checked his eyes, they were like, we're showing you don't have glaucoma, and we know you have glaucoma. You've been coming here for over 3 decades. So there's something going on, something's wrong. Come back in 2 weeks, we'll do the test again. So he came back, same result. They had him come back again, same result. And then at some point they're like, something's wrong here. And they sent him to a specialist. It took almost half a year to get the appointment. And they checked his eyes and they're like, we don't know what's going on, but especially as your age and, being almost 80 and you're getting really old here, glaucoma shouldn't be disappearing. This is absolutely insane. And of course, they didn't know about the hydrogen and the protocols that he was on that I was waiting for him. But his arthritis went away. His cholesterol was great. His, blood pressure was fine. Everything was fine. Everything eventually totally went away. He could stop the medication. He was on a arthritis medication. He was able to stop, which was really nice because it was really a nasty medicine. Some of these medicines just destroy your life. And one of the secrets, I'll tell you one of the secrets about hydrogen is really fascinating. See, a lot of issues actually stem from the mitochondria. And I believe that even cancer, and there's some really good research about hydrogen for cancer, which is very promising too, by the way. And there's a really famous doctor named Dr. Seyfried that basically it appears that cancer is what he calls a metabolic disorder.
Mm-hmm.
That really appears to be. And your metabolism, cancer even has a metabolism. Mm-hmm. So hydrogen has such a profound positive effect on your metabolism. So I've worked with people who are literally overweight. They literally change nothing in their lifestyle other than a proper hydrogen protocol, and they start losing weight because it starts recalibrating this metabolism again. And that's really important, even for spirituality, because the thing about spirituality too is the body needs to be in a certain place.
Yeah.
When you're out of whack, you feel out of whack, and you're not. And so it's really amazing. And my heart condition, just so you guys, to give you an update on that too. I was going to my cardiologist. Obviously, they'd been checking my heart for quite a while, and they were telling me, you don't have a lot of time. We should do something. And after doing all these hydrogen protocols and finding the right equipment, because I was using the wrong equipment, and I was doing a lot of things trying to figure it all out. It took time. And eventually I went to them and they checked it, and they just were like, we don't know what the heck happened, but your heart looks fine all of a sudden. Like this is impossible. And so obviously they rechecked me. They did multiple tests and everything. It was gone. And then I even used the protocol with other people who had heart issues also, and their condition started going away too. And so I was like, wait a second, like maybe we don't need to do these heart surgeries. And it's one of the things that in Japan, hydrogen's literally being used for medically is for heart attacks, by the way. It's really fascinating what they do for heart attacks. You should see the things that I've been able to achieve. It's really unbelievable. Even I have a hard time believing what I'm seeing, because being in the medical field for so long, like I know what's there and I see what they can and cannot do. And little old me, like I don't feel like I'm anything special. And just simple protocols. There was people with like dementia and Alzheimer's. I mean, you don't typically fix that.
No.
And even the medications in the medical establishment, they don't fix it. Their whole goal is to just try to slow it down, and they don't really work that well. And then also like strokes is another very interesting one, actually. And that's another one that it's approved for. And this, you guys are going to love this. I think this is fascinating. Okay, so this is a spiritual part about hydrogen. Here we go.
Yeah.
So hydrogen, remember I told you it's the life molecule. Okay. Now, if we look at an ancient scripture, and this verse is also from the Bible, it says life is in the blood. Okay, so this is, and it's very simple to prove that. Literally, you could tie a rubber band around your arm and leave it there long enough. Obviously, your arm's going to go numb because the blood is not getting in there and moving around. And eventually, your arm's going to die. Like it's just going to turn purple or whatever and die, right? So blood is obviously supplying the life, right, in the body. really important. I don't think it's actually the blood. It's what's in the blood, because nature has designed things to work with gases and liquids. That's why you dissolve gases. For example, like when they check your oxygen saturation, we're talking about a gas saturated in your blood, which is like water, right? And so ultimately, this is really interesting what they found in Japan. It was unbelievable. So if somebody were to have a stroke and they're not getting proper blood supply to a part of their brain, what happens? Well, within 5 minutes, that part of the brain will literally begin to die, right? This is they don't make the best recovery. Well, what they were doing in Japan is they would literally have hydrogen gas in some ambulances, and a person would have a stroke. They'd call the ambulance, get in there, and they'd put them on the hydrogen gas. And by the way, there's different ways, right? There's hydrogen water, hydrogen gas, depending on what you're trying to do and the protocols. Well, we can go into my protocols later.
So would this be similar to like an oxygen tank, but with hydrogen? Like that kind of idea?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Exactly. So instead of oxygen, it's pure hydrogen. A lot of people talk about the mixture. There's a lot of bad information about that too, called Brown's gas, and some of it's just really, really nasty. So you got to be careful, because oxygen is actually toxic. A lot of people don't know that it's toxic. So you have to be careful how much oxygen you give to anybody. And typically oxygen you don't want to use every single day. Like, you're already breathing in oxygen. So by the way, you start supplementing it, your body will literally be like, oh, I need to make less. It'll literally stop making red blood cells. It'll make less of them. So this is why you really have to be careful. Oxygen's a whole other animal as compared to hydrogen. But anyway, so back to the story, basically they would put people on the gas, and even though their brain was not receiving any blood, it wouldn't die. The hydrogen was keeping that part of, literally that part of the brain alive.
Wow.
Yeah, that's
with no blood. I mean, this is like, wait a second, what? Like, have we ever seen like this? And then you get to the hospital, they restore blood supply. Over 99% of the people would make a full recovery, no problem. So that's one of the things that really showed me it is the life molecule. It is the source. You wouldn't be able to put somebody on oxygen and it do that. You know, it just wouldn't happen. And again, in the medical field, you know, for people who really understand, or, you know, doctors out there, you know, we know that you're not supposed to be, you really don't want to put people on oxygen unless you absolutely have to. And the longer that they're on it, typically the worse things get. So then they become dependent on the oxygen. So it's a really bad idea, yet people recommend this all the time. And I'm not saying there's not benefits to oxygen supplementation. You can do it once in a while, but you have to be careful how often. You know, it's really important. And if anything, the real benefits that actually is actually the opposite, which is giving yourself less oxygen. You know, so like high altitude training, like a lot of pro athletes, they limit the oxygen so that the body is like, oh, I got to produce more red blood cells to try to absorb more. So when you stop doing it, now you can really absorb that, you know, much better. So it's actually quite the opposite of what you would think, you know. So there's a lot of protocols and things to learn and understand. But anyway, hopefully that answered the question.
Yes, but I have so many more.
I know everything you say. I want to ask more questions.
Well, okay, let me wait,
Yeah.
because I'm just so fascinated with your own story of everything healing from this, but also your dad's. What's actually going on? Like, what is it? Like, can you simplify? Like, how did his glaucoma go away? His arthritis, the diabetes? Like, so what is the hydrogen doing that it's literally fixing it all?
So, like, I could really, really go into it, but I will tell you this. First of all, it's like even science. So even the top people in the world, or even people who claim to be specialists, there's people out there who claim to be, and I'm not totally in agreement with a lot of the things they say and claim, but basically science doesn't really know.
Okay.
They really don't know. And the truth is that goes almost every pharmaceutical out there. They don't actually really know exactly the full mechanism.
Oh, of course. Yes, of course. Yes.
So there's a few things that they know. They know that hydrogen appears to work as an antioxidant. So that's one interesting thing. They do see that it appears to work as an anti-inflammatory, even a signaling molecule at times. But what's interesting too is, and this is important for people to understand, not all antioxidants are created equal. Are you guys aware of this?
Not really.
I wish I could show you a chart, and maybe if you guys, I don't know if you guys edit your videos, but if you do,
Yeah.
you guys put it up for the listeners. I'm going to pull up a chart right now, but basically, here, let me see, antioxidant sizes versus hydrogen. So when somebody hears the word antioxidant, they just probably think like, oh, okay, I get that in my apple or whatever. Hydrogen is a very unique antioxidant. In fact, I've never seen anything like it ever. And to give you some examples, so like CoQ10 is an antioxidant, and let's say it would be like this size, and then you have vitamin E and it'd be like this size, or vitamin C. But hydrogen compared to those is crazy tiny. And I pulled up a picture here. I don't really know if this is going to help you. Oh, maybe not. It's a really small picture. But basically, so they're actually using the same examples: CoQ10, vitamin E, glutathione, all antioxidants. The problem is, if you were to see the size of one of these things, and then hydrogen would be like literally like a grain of sand, like not even close. The reason that this is important is because if you have like mitochondria that has, free radical damage, by the way, ROS, reactive oxygen species. Notice that a lot of these oxidants have to do with oxygen, like I was saying, oxidative stress. And so basically the hydrogen can go in and it appears to like neutralize it. There's almost see, as I was telling you, the whole universe, basically, I'm trying to make it really simple here. Water, hydrogen has an affinity to oxygen. It's almost like man and woman, and there's just an affinity, like a natural gravity. And so oxidative stress that's in the body, hydrogen appears to just go in there and literally neutralize it by turning water. I mean, that's, I mean, if I could put it in the most simplest form, I mean, it's a way more complex than that. But
you did a good job simplifying that. No, that makes sense. And your visuals are extremely helpful as well. So yes, thank you.
And so then you're able to neutralize these free radicals, which are impeding the body from running, naturally in the way that it really wants to flow. I've discovered a lot of things through self-experimentation. I had blood work by a doctor who has over 30 years experience. And I get my blood work checked regularly because I always mess around with creating different protocols. And I want to make sure what's working and what isn't working. And the very last blood work that I got, because I got a lot throughout the years, I literally had the doctor call me. Now, doctors, for people who understand the medical field, like, you normally don't get a phone call unless it's bad news. That's the rule of thumb in the medical field, because they don't want to be calling everybody, and telling everybody everything's fine. So I get this phone call and I got really nervous. I was like, whoa, what's going on? Why are you calling me? They're like, oh, I'm calling you about the blood results. And it's the actual doctor calling me. Usually they have somebody else who calls you and gives you the bad news. And I was just like, okay, just tell me what it is. What's going on? What'd you guys find? And she said, oh, no, everything's fine. And I'm like, then why are you calling? She said, I had to talk to you. And I was like, why? She said, in all the years that I've been doing this, she said, I've never in my life seen blood work like yours, ever, never once. And I was like, okay. And she said, I want to know what you're doing. This is unbelievable. She said, I want to do this for my patients. What exactly are you doing? And so I started explaining to her some of my protocols, and she's like, oh my God, that soun's like too much work. It almost,
wow, that's absolutely incredible.
But there are simple things. And I was surprised that she thought it was so much work. So like one of the things that I educate on is how to clean water. So all water filtration modalities, and there's not everyone is the same. You can have reverse osmosis. You can have different types of carbon filters, gravity filters. Not everything filters out everything. That was my big thing when I created my protocols. I'm like, I want the cleanest water. And everybody argues about water. Like,
it's so hard to find good information.
It's so frustrating, right? Like when I was doing my research originally, it was very frustrating. People saying, oh, no, it should be alkaline water. No, it should be structured water. No, it should be this water or this water filter. And then I'm a very independent thinker. So I'm not really, I'll listen to other people's opinions, but I'm not really good at just accepting their word as gospel. I'm always have to research. And basically I started asking myself the question, if none of these water filters can filter out everything, and I have a lab report actually right here it's a really interesting water lab report I can share with you in a second. If there's nothing out there that can filter everything out, and I want water that's absolutely the cleanest, how exactly am I going to achieve this? And then also I'm really big on observing nature. So I'm like, how does nature clean water? And guys, super spiritual all over again. It literally starts with hydrogen, because the sun, which is, as we already established, pretty much entirely hydrogen, it actually hits the water on planet Earth, and the water ascends.
Mm.
You know, the distillation, the more,
Never
No.
thought like that.
and then through the ascension process, it leaves all impurities behind. Okay, and then it literally comes out as rain or snow. And what people don't know about rain or snow, and here's another biblical verse for you: pure as the driven snow, or pure white as. So high level of purity, right? And so then I started researching distillation, and I quickly found that that was the only way. It's actually what I would call carbon distillation. It's a combination of distillation and carbon. For people who want to use the equipment I use, which I always go after the best. This one's American made, and it's a website called mypurewater.com.
Mm-hmm.
If people want a discount code, it's the same name as my YouTube channel. So it's Uprising144K. So these are carbon distillers. And basically, and that's actually this lab report, which is so nuts. There's pages and pages of all these contaminants. It's probably too bright there in the ink.
Oh my gosh, we can see,
You can see how many there are.
Gosh.
Pages of stuff that's in our water. You won't believe what's in our water. So if, in my opinion, if you really want to do the easiest thing to improve your health, like the absolute easiest thing, first, clean your water.
Mm-hmm.
There is no water filter out there that can eliminate all bacteria, all mold, mold spores, and viruses. There is no water filter that can do that except for carbon distillation. Carbon distillation will remove all the bacteria, all the mold. I mean, it removes all that stuff through the process of the nature that God put within water.
Mm-hmm.
Even whatever, I won't get into those details, right? But basically within nature, the power of nature. So that's why I started looking into equipment, and I started looking at the lab reports, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this cleans everything out of the water. Now, a lot of people may be like, well, it removes all the minerals too. Well, you really do have to understand that there's a difference between organic and inorganic minerals too. Mm-hmm. So minerals could actually be contaminated, in my opinion. So what you actually can do if you want to, and it's fine, is add minerals to the water afterwards. And I'm a big fan of a company called Concentrace. I don't know if you heard Concentrace or Concentrate Minerals.
Yeah, trace minerals.
Oh, yes, we do.
And so they have a really great bottle where they eliminate like 99% of the salt, because I know everybody, there's a big argument about salt. And me personally, I'm not going to say that I don't like salt. Of course, I like salt, a little Himalayan, a little Celtic sea salt, something like that. But I'm not like want to use a massive amount of salt thinking it's really great for my body, because the Japanese data, they literally did some very interesting research on salt, because the Japanese use a lot of salt. A lot of salt. The soy sauces and their meat.
Oh, sure.
A lot of salt. And they did find a correlation between the hardening of arteries, strokes, heart issues. And so you don't want a ton of salt, but you do want the minerals. The minerals are actually the part that are really important. So that Concentrates company, just their product's awesome. And it's not very expensive. And I put those drops I actually was putting them in my smoothies. Because the reason I started getting really heavily into smoothies was because of some other medical data that came out about the importance and the function of fiber. And I don't think almost anybody talks enough about it. The human body literally requires a massive amount of fiber. It's almost unbelievable. So here's a statistic for you. The minimum amount of fiber that is required by the body is what we are told, quote unquote, by the government, that is the daily amount that they tell us we need is actually the minimum that the body needs. Only 3% of Americans meet that requirement. So only 3% get the minimum that you need. Now, this is one of the reasons I believe that the doctor was so impressed with my blood work, because the average person, like an American or anywhere around the world, almost everybody is deficient in something. I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but everybody has nutritional deficiencies. And the problem with a nutritional deficiency is, again, back to the medical data, we literally have proven that with certain deficiencies, they lead to disease. So if I were to give you like a simple example, like if you were to be deficient in vitamin C, you literally will get scurvy, right?
Yeah.
Do you guys know what the cure, and I shouldn't use the word cure, do you know what makes scurvy go away?
Vitamin C.
Proper levels of vitamin C.
Right.
You know, this is what I mean about the whole medical establishment is they always throw these different medicines at you. But my theory, because I'm a very independent thinker, was I want to make sure that if my body's in disarray, which it was, I want to make sure that I overcome all my nutritional deficiencies just in case that's what it is, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
And even if it isn't the source of my problems, you know that it's going to put your body in its optimal place where it needs to be, right?
Yeah.
I needed that. So I had to figure out how to do that. The problem is that no matter how hard people try, they can't achieve it. And one of those, there's two reasons for that, or maybe three, because I discovered the secret. The secret is fiber, because see, fiber is literally like a sponge. Like think about, let's say you were to have a cup of water and you were to just drop it and you're trying to catch as much of the water as you can to hydrate your body or whatever. But if you had a sponge and you drop it, you can catch more water and then slowly trickle the water like an IV. Have you ever noticed how an IV works with the, like little drops? They're not pouring a giant glass of water down your, throat. And so fiber functions like a sponge, and then it can trickle nutrients little by little into your body so that you can get really good absorption. So and hydration is also important, and hydrogen is also crucial. So I use, those are the three keys: hydration with clean water, a lot of fiber, and the hydrogen. And I started getting my levels. That's why the doctor called me. She's like, your levels are unbelievable. She said, you don't have any deficiencies, because I specifically request to get tested for certain nutritional deficiencies, because if I'm not meeting certain levels, like my vitamin D levels, for example, then I need to make adjustments in my life. And she just saw it. She's like, this is crazy. She said, I cannot achieve what you're doing with my patients. And I've been a doctor of over 30 years. And she said, I don't know how you do this. She said she had problems with her daughter having nutritional deficiencies that were causing her medical problems. Specifically, iron was one of the ones for her daughter too. And what people don't realize, and this is really good science, really new stuff too, is that things work synergistically in the body. Like I'll give you some of the new data on vitamin D. Vitamin D, they used to be like, okay, take vitamin D, right? But then they started realizing that it works with K2, with vitamin K. So then they have vitamin D with K2. Well, now they realize, and see, this is what I mean. They're going to continue to learn. They don't know everything. Now they're realizing that it also works with magnesium, right? Yeah. So what I do is, instead of trying to figure it all out, because these scientists just look at all these little things and it becomes a matrix that's too confusing. It's like, just forget all that. Just try to get all your nutrients, all your minerals, and let the body do what it does naturally. Like you don't need to figure every little thing out. And so I keep it really simple. But minerals, I was putting them in my smoothies because I was visualizing. I get, it's crazy to say this, I get visions, and I tend not to talk about it because I'm a data guy. So talking about vision sounds all weird. But hydrogen has brought me crazy amount of visions. You were talking about the information being within hydrogen. I believe it's done something to me, and I can see things, and things come. It's weird, the things that I feel like that I know and that I can see that the rest of the world doesn't see, and feel alone in the world. I probably sound like a weirdo, but anyway.
No,
you're speaking our language.
No, yeah, I have third eye visions constantly.
And I don't think any scientific discovery has been made without intuition and without something else coming through. It's not all just data.
Well, thank you for not making me feel weird. So ultimately, in my vision, I'm seeing that I know that the food is deficient in minerals because the soils are depleted, which is very different in Japan, by the way. Their farming is unbelievable. They're probably the best in the world. But
still in Japan today. I'm so intrigued.
And the Japanese understand how minerals work too, including of how it affects the flavor of food, and it's unreal. But anyway, that's a whole other conversation. They're masterful in their food also. And so anyway, so I started putting the minerals in the smoothies, thinking that they'll work synergistically with the fiber. I've been doing that for years. 3 years after me doing this, they did the first study on that method that I was using, and the results were unbelievable. Basically, I was right. And what I started noticing with their patients is that their bones, they were literally rebuilding bone. So you know how people have all these issues with their bones. They go to a doctor. What does the doctor tell you? Oh, take some calcium. And they don't understand, they just don't understand how the body really works, in my opinion. I hate to say that, but the Japanese continue to make new discoveries. There was another really interesting discovery too about how the fiber, specifically from vegetables, but they also noticed it with other fiber, but primarily the vegetables. They were observing that if you were to eat vegetables first thing in the morning, which who does that, right? Like almost nobody does that, right? That it was regulating blood glucose all day long. But they couldn't understand why. They're like, why would vegetables do that? Now, granted, I have my own protocol where I do my hydrogen water always first, but then I make my smoothies. That was one of the reasons that I started the smoothies, because I'm like, how am I going to consume all these vegetables in the morning? Oh, I'll put them in a smoothie, right? And a lot of people are into juicing, which I tried, and I'm not knocking juicing, but the truth is, you don't want to throw that fiber away. You want this fiber.
Right.
And juicing is way more expensive, way more time consuming. And in my opinion, the smoothies are easier, faster, better in every way. So then that fiber, what they ultimately learned is they learned that it discovered a new part of our body that we didn't know. So we have these microscopic holes in our GI system, and the fiber will literally go in there from these vegetables. And little by little, that fiber gets released, and it's helping regulate your blood glucose all day long.
Interesting. That is so fascinating.
And of course, it helps with mineral absorption, because you're getting this constant flow of little trickle of minerals, and people's bones were loving it, And so I started implementing that into my protocol. And, like not to like poo-poo. Some people have like the idea of like, oh, I'm just a carnivore, I'm going to eat nothing but meat and eggs. Yeah. Like, look, that's cool. Like I don't knock whatever people want to do, but where's the fiber? I mean, you need the fiber. And I've seen blood work from people who've been on the carnivore for a long time, and they have a lot of nutritional deficiencies. There's actually problems with electrolytes when people just eat nothing but,
meat. We've done it.
Yeah, we've experimented with a lot of different diets, and I felt great doing a carnivore diet, but I also was cramping a lot.
Yeah,
and I felt really dehydrated.
And I was getting heart palpitations.
Yeah,
women is very different than men, though. Like I really do not advise doing that as a woman. I've said that for too long, other than if you want to experiment, but I completely agree.
But I also think that what's important to note, and this is one of the biggest problems with a lot of research, even the hydrogen research actually, but as far as diets is, there's a huge difference between short-term data and long-term data.
Yeah.
So you can go carnivore short-term, just like fasting. There's great benefits fasting short-term, but if you go long-term, I mean, it's a problem. You'll die.
Yeah, it's all fascinating.
I know, yeah. Can we touch on your protocol a little bit, and what you did with the hydrogen and kind of how that works? I know there's so many different ways, and you showed the little plastic bottles and the bigger things, and I know there's pills, and there's all these different ways of getting hydrogen. Yeah, we can talk about all of it, but
I'm going to branch off that question too. Yes, please. And then is it different protocols for different people? Obviously.
I do have to sometimes modify the protocol for different people. So I don't like to do it a lot, but I do individual consults with people. The reason I don't like to do it a lot is just I really have a very spiritual path that I live by. And so I have this whole rhythm in my life, but when there's people who are suffering, it's very hard for me not to help them. And to answer your question simply, absolutely, because depending on what medications you might be on, you should see how hydrogen really affects things. It's really pretty fascinating, actually. Also, depending, like, let's say somebody has kidney issues and they can't drink a certain amount of water, then we'd have to modify it. So it really depends, and I've even done things. I mean, I've already achieved a lot of things in regards to like the medical establishment saying that certain things are just impossible to fix. And I've literally have witnessed, these things going away. Like One of them was someone in my own family who had, basically they were having kidney failure. They were going to have to be on dialysis within a month. And, the medical system will tell you, oh, you can't fix the kidneys. I mean, I don't know if you know that, but that's what a doctor,
Dialysis.
you can't fix it. And I have a protocol specifically for that. And my own brother who had these problems, we reversed his kidney disease and he never went on dialysis. And he was like, oh my God, his doctor was like, oh, your tests are showing up fine now. What's going on? And then, you know how the doctors are. It's so funny because it depends on what doctor you're talking to. But basically a doctor will be like, oh, your kidneys are functioning now. Okay, great. See you later. Don't need to see you anymore. Instead of, what did you do? Is there something that I don't know about that maybe is out there, like hydrogen, maybe? Maybe clean water. Does it really make a difference with your kidneys? Yeah, it definitely does. And so again, if I'm not going to go over every contaminant in water, but I can tell you, like for example, I'll tell you the three highest amounts of pharmaceuticals in our water. Here's a crazy one for you guys. One, antidepressants. Because did you know that 1 in 2 women roughly are on antidepressants in America? Roughly 50%.
I believe it.
Wow, that's jarring.
They pee that out, and it's in the water. And what do you think is happening to people when they're drinking water that is not properly filtered? They're literally, and I don't know if you guys know, latest data appears, I'm not making any claims, but long-term usage of antidepressants, a lot of people don't know that it appears it's probably going to cause Parkinson's. So, now people,
Interesting.
And people also don't know that a 20 to 30 minute walk has been shown to be more effective than any antidepressant in existence. So it's like, what are you doing? Like, what the hell's going on here? Women need to be educated, right? So we can help them because it's important for them to be balanced, right? Because they affect their man too. And, so that's really important. The other pharmaceutical that's in high levels in the water is antibiotics. So imagine what that's doing to your body and your gut. Antibiotics are great when you need them, but you don't need a constant dose of antibiotics.
Yeah.
And then if anybody ever, has an issue where they need something like an antibiotic or don't have access to it, look into what garlic does. I don't know if you've known that garlic has been used as a natural antibiotic. And that's a really good one too. And then the third pharmaceutical that's at really high levels was, gosh, now I got to remember. Let's see, it was, women's contraception.
Oh, yeah.
So imagine what that's going to do to both men and females hormonally.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Not to mention all the other stuff. I'm only giving you.
Yeah, exactly. That's just 3 of them. But yeah, fertility problems.
Pages of stuff in the water. And not to mention microplastics, by the way.
Yeah.
The number source of microplastics comes from your water. So again, really important. And that also affects people hormonally.
Yeah.
And so anyway, the protocols are really simple. Let's give the simple protocol.
Okay.
First one, clean your water properly. So we established mypurewater.com does those carbon distillers. They're not that expensive. I think with the discount code, it's like 500 and something bucks for their cheapest one. But that thing's cost you a lifetime.
Yeah, sure, of course. Yeah, that's an investment. Yes, yes.
500 and something dollars for me for the cleanest water known to man. I'm just like, that's a no-brainer. At least it's not $50,000. So that's really cool. And by the way, the uses, the things you can do with that water is unbelievable. And I want to remember to come back to that in a second.
Okay.
Part of the protocol is get the best hydrogen machine in the world. The best machine is there. The website is called, for the official site, is called holyhydrogen.com. What a fitting name, Holy. We were talking about.
I love it.
So holyhydrogen.com. If they want my discount code, it doesn't matter to me if people use whatever discount code, but my code is the same as my channel name, Uprising 144K. And Uprising because through the uprising or ascension process, that's how purity happens. And hydrogen ascends higher than anything known to man, by the way. That's why I really like the ascension of hydrogen. Very spiritual, very healing. And the machine, it's important too, because that's an actual Japanese machine. It's literally the #1 machine in all of Japan. It's actually the #1 machine in the world, in my opinion, actually, based on a lot of data. And the other important factor of it is it makes both the water, the hydrogen water with the tiny micro nano bubbles, all the important stuff, full saturation, lab tested, certified, no hydrogen machine in the world lab tests and certifies every single machine they built. Nobody does that except for Holy Hydrogen. It's
Wow.
unbelievable. They are the best in the world. I just saw a lab report of their product versus other machines out there, and it was unbelievable too. I actually have one of their lab reports here. It literally tells you the equipment they used, the date that they measured the hydrogen, because they want to make sure that all the levels are correct, that the machine is supposed to do. And most people don't do, no company does this because it's just way too expensive. But these Japanese are just passionate and anal about doing everything precise. That's why I love the Japanese. Like, they're samurais, they're just so perfect.
Yeah.
I mean, perfection. So that's the best machine. And although it's a little more expensive than other machines out there, one thing I've learned about the hydrogen machines is they break. These little bottles, they break. Why do they break? Remember, we're talking about a metal and water and running electricity. They just start falling apart. I mean, that's what they do. So the Japanese one is designed very differently. So the fact that it will last crazy amount of time, like years and years and years and years, like I still have my original machine after all, it actually ends up being the cheapest way, because you don't just keep buying garbage products.
Yeah.
And then the purity is important. So anyway, and it doesn't just make the water, it also makes hydrogen gas for inhalation.
Oh.
So this is important in my opinion, because my ultimate protocols use both a combination of the water with the hydrogen gas inhalation.
It's so fast.
That creates the best results ultimately. And you got to be really careful about hydrogen gas inhalation. There's literally companies out there that use lye or sodium hydroxide to make their hydrogen, which in my opinion is pure insanity. That's literally that's what cartels use to dissolve human bodies, by the way.
Oh,
That's
Lord.
crazy. It's the Drano, right?
That's exactly what it is.
It's so gross.
It's so gross. And people literally, they just buy into it because they don't understand hydrogen. The machine that I use is no chemicals. You know, it's the best in the world. So anyway, people can read all about it on that official website. So those two things, the reason that clean water is so important is because we're going to be dissolving hydrogen gas into the water and utilizing the water as a carrier for the gas. Now, let's also talk about why the cleanliness of the water is so important, because we can do magical stuff with this water, by the way, guys. Have you guys ever heard of the neti pot?
Yes.
All right. Did you know that some people have died using the neti pot?
No.
Okay. Did you know that? Have you ever read the instructions or the directions for the neti pot?
If I have, it's been a long time.
So the instructions clearly state that you're supposed to use distilled water. Why? Because remember I told you, water appears to have viruses, bacteria, parasites, funguses, pharmaceuticals, all sorts of stuff. Even filtered water is not perfect. Okay, so these people were running this water through their sinuses, and they would literally get like a parasite or something go into their brain, and it would literally kill people.
Oh my gosh.
And a lot of people don't know this because they didn't read the directions, and they also don't understand the difference between distilled water, or as I also call it, carbon distilled, because it removes all impurities. I mean, everything. There's a reason that even in the medical field, like an IV bag, the base, when they first make that fluid, starts with distilled water. They're not going to use some filtered water or bottled water, because it has to be of the highest purity if it's going straight into your veins. All right. So this is why if you have your own carbon distiller, like, it's way better than buying distilled water. If you buy distilled water all the time, I've already calculated it. That machine will literally pay itself off in 6 months or less. Because you're making it, and you're making it on your own, which is even better, because when you buy it from the store, it's sitting in this plastic jug forever. And that bottled water has some of the highest levels of microplastics there is.
Yes.
So making it yourself is better. And so once you have that, and you can do protocols, for example, if you have the carbon distilled water and you run it through a proper hydrogen machine. Again, please don't do these protocols with these type of devices, or in my opinion, there is no device out there that I would recommend doing this except for it's called a Lourdes Hydrofix Premium, the one from Holy Hydrogen. It's the only machine that I would use for what I'm about to share. You can literally take that water and put drops in your eyes. That's what the guy was doing for the torn retina.
Oh my gosh.
But you wouldn't want to do that if the water is not of the highest purity, okay? Because your eyes, a lot of people don't know, they're literally a part of your brain.
Oh yeah.
So a lot of people really don't know that. And so it's very important, right? So that's why these protocols, I always emphasize, and there's always someone out there who's like, oh no, I know better. And I'm like, oh no. So I'm always, on sharing too many details, but you can even put them into the ears, for different people with ear issues. Obviously you can drink the water. I prefer drinking it on an empty stomach. So all the hydrogen goes in there. And like my protocol in the morning, when I wake up, here's a funny thing about one of my protocols. And this came from medical data too, from Japan. The first thing I do in the morning, a lot of people wake up, everybody tends to go pee or something, right? That's the first thing people do. But then a lot of people will either drink a cup of coffee or eat something or whatever they do. Never do that, in my opinion. The very first thing you want to do is you want to go grab a toothbrush. Don't put any toothpaste on it though. You just wet it, brush your teeth really quickly. We're talking like 20 seconds, right? Just a quick brush. But make sure to brush the inner surfaces of your mouth. So your cheeks, the roof of your mouth, your tongue. Because what the Japanese discovered is that while we're sleeping, we're literally growing cancer-causing bacteria in our mouth. And I think that there's probably more than just cancer-causing. We grow this bacteria in our mouth. So the moment you eat or drink something, you literally ingest that into your system. And in the long term, this is going to affect the body and potentially cause inflammation. So here's a simple tip for everybody. You just brush your teeth with just water and a toothbrush. A lot of people don't know that just by brushing, you don't need toothpaste actually. And the reason that I don't want the toothpaste is because if it leaves the residue, the next part of my protocol is drinking the hydrogen water. Because when you wake up, you're actually practically at your most dehydrated moment of the day. And the last thing you want to do is drink a diuretic like coffee, right? So it all starts with hydration first. And so drink a certain amount depending on, which protocol you're going to follow, but drink the hydrogen water first. That's what I always do. And then once I get that hydrogen water in me, for me, and the protocol would be different depending on the person, but then I go and start making my smoothie. Because my smoothie is not just for me to get my proper amount of fiber. It's not just to get my proper amount of minerals, but it's literally is my multivitamin. And it happens to be my sustenance for the day too. And so that's why I do it. And of course, I wasn't sure if it would work. That was the whole reason because you wouldn't think that these fruits and vegetables would be enough. Well, I do fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds. Sometimes I put beans, as crazy as that sounds. I put a fermented bean from Japan called natto. That stuff has almost as much protein as beef. It's almost the same as beef. But it has all these other properties that are really fascinating. And the Japanese have done more research on natto than anybody in the world. And the health benefits are out of this world. Just out of this world. Very anti-cancerous, by the way. It literally helps oxygenate cells too. And another thing that people don't know, by the way, this is interesting. So if you get proper oxygenation of the blood, because remember, we're already breathing in 20% roughly oxygen. So you don't really need to supplement it, that much. We're already getting enough. But what a lot of people don't know is a body's ability to use that oxygen to the maximum level. One thing I've noticed was there was a guy who had major lung issues. He smoked 3 packs of cigarettes a day for 50 years, this guy. His lungs were shot. And he was on oxygen all the time, and he was not doing good. His saturation levels were really bad. He gets on hydrogen thinking, well, I don't know if it's going to help because it's not oxygen. Sure enough, his oxygen levels go up because a lot of your ability to absorb oxygen actually that we're breathing in, a lot of people have saturation problems is because there's something wrong with the body. Not that we don't have enough oxygen, right? And a lot of people don't know that one, I've seen hydrogen help with that dramatically. The other one, a lot of people don't know that vegetables have been shown. So because it has to do with the pH of the blood. I don't even know if the pH stands for potential hydrogen. I don't know if you guys knew that.
I did not know that.
So
it's literally everything everywhere.
Anyway, that's the other reason I do a lot of the fruits and vegetables. It really helps oxygenate my system, the right type of oxygen too, and it works beautifully with the hydrogen. And so anyway, not to get too crazy, but that's some of my stuff. But as far as like, let's say somebody is doing carnivore, whatever diet anybody's doing, to be quite honest, you clean your mouth, you do the hydrogen water at least. You can inhale the hydrogen. This is another one of my protocols. You can inhale the hydrogen gas while you're eating. So if you're eating or drinking your smoothie or whatever, and that's actually a really, really amazing tip on multiple levels, because the other beautiful thing about hydrogen, there's so many things that it does, by the way, the list is that it also protects you. So what I mean by that, like my videos are all numbered. If you guys were to ever watch my video number 8, it's unbelievable. They were showing cells that were being exposed to like chemotherapy, radiation, stuff like that. And you would get basically 90% cellular destruction. Like it was really bad. It kills everything. And then they would do the same thing, but they were implementing hydrogen. And instead of 90% death, you got 10%, which was massive. And one of these days, I actually really want to talk with Elon Musk one of these days, because he's going to have to deal with an issue as far as going to Mars on how to combat radiation. Because a lot of people don't know that when you're in outer space, in 24 hours of being in outer space, the amount of radiation you're bombarded with, as compared to Earth, it would take you 6 months on planet Earth what you get in 24 hours in outer space.
Holy
so
crap.
Being in outer space destroys your body. It's not good for your bones. It's not good for your heart. It's not good on multiple fronts. So traveling a long distance to Mars, I mean, by the time you get there, you'll be almost dead, right? Or you'll be really weak. You won't be dead probably, but you'll be really weak. So I have tips already on how to combat such things. And hydrogen is so protective. Here's the other problem. Like if you want to do the best thing for your health too, in this day and age, we're all being bombarded with something, whether it's chemicals in our food, microplastics, stuff in our water. I mean, the list is massive. Even just the painting your house, you should see what the Japanese are doing as far as building these non-toxic houses. It's unbelievable. It's just such a thing of beauty. But America, they don't really think about that too much, right? Glue everywhere. I mean, if you've ever been in a new house in America, it just smells. You can smell the chemicals. Cars too. New cars. People are like, oh, that new car smell. I'm like, that's not what I want. And so anyway, hydrogen appears to protect you from all sorts of stuff at a very high level, and super impressive, by the way, as far as some of the data that has been shown. So that's why I'm a big believer in just using it for protective measures, and then enhance everything, including nutrient absorption, which I think I've proven that with my blood work to my physician. She just couldn't believe that. And so anyway, so those are some of the protocols. It really helps with people's sleep. That was another one. I believe that hydrogen actually helps with your circadian rhythm. And I've literally seen it with people and how it helps people sleep so much better. And so one of my protocols is inhaling the hydrogen before bed. Like you can do 30 to 90 minutes. You can literally be inhaling it while you're working on the computer. You could be inhaling it, when you're on phone calls or watching a movie, or I like to do it when we're eating dinner, because I don't know if you guys know about this data, but there's some medical data that shows that with every meal we eat, it actually is aging us. So food is accelerating our age. And so that's where I came up with inhaling the hydrogen, because it's protecting my body as I'm eating. And I always load up on the hydrogen water 20 to 30 minutes before eating, because the human body requires a massive amount of water to digest meals. A lot of people are unaware of that also. So you prep the body, don't drink it while you're eating.
Right.
First, empty stomach. So I tend to drink it before breakfast, lunch, and dinner, stuff like that. So a lot of different protocols that you can play around with, but those are just some of mine. I have a lot of protocols depending on the issues, but clean water, clean hydrogen, that's the easiest thing you could ever do to improve your life, in my opinion.
So simple, with something that nature provides us. I think it's absolutely incredible. You've blown my mind. I am just so grateful that we've had this conversation. As we're wrapping up here, we want to make sure we will absolutely link your website, your YouTube channel, because there's so many videos there that you've already mentioned. We want to make sure that if there's anywhere else you want to direct our listeners to find you or find out what more, every website that you've mentioned on the show, we will also link in the show notes too, just for our listeners and audience to go there. But lastly, if there's anything that you feel we didn't cover, we want to give you the opportunity to share anything that's either on your mind or heart that you feel is really important for the audience to hear.
So the first thing I will say is my channel has been under attack a lot, and I've been personally under attack a lot. And so that's careful about the way that I speak these days. But what I will say is, obviously, you can even help just support everything I'm trying to do for free by subscribing on YouTube. So that's one. But I'm also on Rumble. I'm on Twitter or X. I'm on Instagram. And I think that's it. I mean, maybe there's one other one I'm missing, but that's about it. And the reason that it's good to go subscribe at those other places, even though all my best and latest info is always on YouTube, but the reason that it's good is if YouTube ever gets taken down, that's how you're going to find me again, is by going to one of these other platforms and me showcasing whatever the new, and if anybody can literally, if any of your viewers want to download or upload or whatever, or all my videos and save them, that's always a good thing, because there's been a lot of stuff in regards to that. So that might be helpful. And beyond that, I'll just keep bringing information. Yeah, I didn't even get to share with you guys how to absorb light, by the way. There's some crazy stuff that I started noticing in regards to the usage of hydrogen. There's so many things that I've learned just through time and trying. I will tell you one thing, that it wasn't just me, it was my father, but I also noticed that we stopped burning in the sun. And it's like, wait a second, why would hydrogen do that? And it's because our body doesn't have the ability to absorb the light the way it should. And the sun is magical, but the sun can damage you. It can damage your eyes, it can damage your skin. And so I discovered through the protocols that hydrogen, especially the correct type of hydrogen, is actually enhancing your health even more with the power of the sun, rather than it causing damage. And so that's just one other little quick tip that I thought would maybe find fascinating.
Yeah, that's incredible. Oh my gosh, Greg, the hydrogen man. I am just, again, so grateful for you diving deep with us, for sharing all of your wisdom, your knowledge, as well as being vulnerable. And like I said, my goodness, did you turn your pain into purpose? And I am grateful that you are a part of this world that we so desperately need in this time to create whatever is going to ensue in the near future. So again, thank you so much for joining us on the Deep Life today.
Absolutely, guys. Thanks for having me on. It was a pleasure. And yeah, we'll do something again sometime.